Hello everybody. Today I can prepare for my equations test by practicing. Everything that's going to be in your test, you're going to see in your review sheet, so let's get to it now. So, if it's an equation and it's multiple choice, use multiple choice strategy. Take each potential answer and we're going to substitute it in. So we've got choice 1, -2. So I'll do -2 store as x. I will type in the left-hand side, radical 2x minus 4. I'll type in the right-hand side. Nope, I won't type in the right-hand side since I get an error. That one's out. Next, I'll try 2. So I will go back to my calculator and I will do 2 store as x. I will type in the left-hand side. I can copy and paste it since I already typed it in. I will type in the right-hand side, x minus 2. Does the left-hand side equal the right-hand side? Yes. So 2 definitely works. The only option that has 2 is choice 2. Let's just check 4 to be sure. Oops, wrong one. So I got 4 store as x. I've got the left-hand side was radical 2x minus 4. The right-hand side was x minus 2. And yes, the left-hand side equals the right-hand side. Choice 2 is the answer. Even though number 2 is a different type of equation, if it's multiple choice, it's the same process. Take each answer, store it, type the left-hand side, type the right-hand side, see if it matches. Now, this one, we're going to solve it algebraically, and then I'm going to also show you the open response trick. To solve a radical equation, isolate the radical, plus x, 3 plus x is x plus 3 equals radical x plus 5. Now that the radical is isolated, I can square both sides. The square and the radical cancel. The left with what was inside the radical. On the other side, x plus 3 squared, well, that's x plus 3 times itself. And whenever you're squaring a binomial, we do our box. X plus 3, x plus 3, that's x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9, x squared plus 6x plus 9. So I have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals x plus 5. Mr. X squared, he wants to party. Minus x minus 5. All of his friends have to come over. I've got x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. X plus 4, x plus 1, factor the trinomial. Set each factor equal to 0, x plus 4 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, minus 1, x is -1, x is -4. And now I must check. Same process I did with the multiple choice. Either way, you must check. Not that you did something wrong, but it may not work. So I'll start with storing -4. Go to the original problem, left-hand side. Right-hand side. Do they match? Nope. So that one's out. Now we'll try -1. -1 store as x. Oops, wrong thing. -1 store as x. Left-hand side was 3. Right-hand side, -x plus radical x plus 5. 3, did I match? Yes. That's my answer. Now, if you can't do the algebra, not ideal, but if you can't do the algebra, y1, y2 intersect. So I've got y equals, I've got 3, my left-hand side, I've got negative x plus radical x plus 5. My right-hand side, zoom 6 is your standard window. Do I see the intersection? Yes. Second trace, option 5. Move the cursor to the point of intersection. Enter, enter, enter. X coordinate, x coordinate is your answer. X equals negative 1. There it is. That will only get you half of the points of the question, and to get those points, you must write y1, y2 intersect. But half the points is better than none. Fractional equation. To get rid of fractions in an equation, multiply by the LCD. To find the LCD, we list all of our factors and all of our denominators, and we put them together. First factor, x. Second factor, x minus 1. My LCD, x minus 1. So I am multiplying everything by the LCD, x minus 1. The reason I do that is to get my denominators to cancel. So x minus 1 and x minus 1 cancel. X and x cancel. X minus 1 and x minus 1 cancel. What's left here? X times x, which is x squared. 2 times x minus 1. For now, we'll leave it as 2 times x minus 1. What's left here? 1 times x, x. Now we proceed with the equation solving. We distribute. From here, it's really nothing new. Combine like terms. Mr. X squared, he wants to party. All of his friends have to come over. Minus 3x plus 2. I've got x squared minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. Party time. There's no GCF. It is a trinomial. Minus, minus, multiply to 2, add to 3, 2 and 1 equals 0. Set each factor equal to 0. X equals 1. X equals 2. Now we must check. You must check. Now, there's a shortcut. You don't have to do a full check. All you really have to check for is to see if your answer makes the denominator 0, in which case it's not correct. It's rejected. 1 will make this 0, so I know that 1 won't work. 2 won't, so 2 is good. But I can do a full check. Might as well. 2 store as x. Type the left-hand side in, alpha x, x over x minus 1. That's my left-hand side. My right-hand side, 2 over x plus 1 over x minus 1. Does the left-hand side equal the right-hand side? Yes. 1 is the other value I got. Type in the left-hand side. Error. Can't have 0 in the denominator, so you get it there as well. Now, if you can't do the algebra, again, not ideal, but y1, y2 intersect. Y equals left-hand side, alpha x, x over x minus 1. Right-hand side, 2 over x plus 1 over x minus 1. Graph. You're looking for the blue hits the red. It looks like it's hitting in 2 spots. Second trace. Intersect. It looks like it's hitting around here. Enter, enter, enter. It jumps over there, which means it didn't hit over there. X value, X value, X value. X is 2. So the answer comes from there as well. Again, you're getting full points for doing the algebra, getting half points for doing the calculator trick. I'd rather have the full points, but I'd rather have something rather than nothing. 3x3 systems. We're going to do this algebraically, and we're going to do it using PolySci 2. Let's start with algebraically. If it's open response, this is 4 points. You're getting 4 points for doing it algebraically. You're only getting 1 point for PolySci 2. But if it's multiple choice, you get full credit for PolySci 2. You will have 1 open response, and you will have 1 multiple choice. So I'm going to label my equations A, B, and C. I need to get the same variable to cancel in each. So I'm going to make a choice and cancel the y's. I'm going to choose A and B because right now, if I add them together, they will cancel without any additional work. So I'm going to do what's going to make my life easier. 2x minus 2y plus z equals 7. I add them together. Again, the y's are going to cancel without any work. Great. It's not going to always be the case. We may need to multiply by the other's coefficient, which we'll have to do next. So that's equation D. I'm going to pick another pair of equations now and get the same variable to cancel. So since I got y to cancel in the first one, I have to get y to cancel in the second set. I'm going to choose B and C since the y's are different signs. X plus y plus 2z equals negative 4. In this case, I will have to multiply each equation by the other's coefficient. Since I have a 1 on bottom, I put a 1 on top. I put a 2 on bottom. The signs are different. That's good. So I keep everything outside positive. I multiply everything through. 2x minus 2y plus z equals 7. On bottom, 2x plus 2y plus 4z equals negative 8. Now I add them together. Y's cancel. 4x plus 5z equals negative 1. That's D. Now I take D and E and I do a 2x2 system that we did back in Algebra 1. So I've got 3x minus 2z equals 5. I've got 4x plus 5z equals negative 1. I choose a variable to cancel. I'm going to choose the z's since they're different signs. 5 on top, 2 on bottom, and since they're different signs, I keep everything outside positive. I multiply everything through. I got 15x minus 10z equals 25. And I've got on bottom 8x plus 10z equals negative 2. I add them together. 23x equals 23. Divide both sides by 23. I get x equals 1. I then choose one of the original 2x2s. I'll choose E. 4x plus 5z equals negative 1. And I replace the x with what I just found, the 1. And now I solve it for z. Minus 4, 5z equals negative 5. Divide by 5. Z equals negative 1. Now that I got those two answers, I go back to one of my originals. It doesn't matter which. Let's go C. Let's go x plus y plus 2z equals negative 4. And I'm going to substitute 1 in for x, negative 1 in for y. I'm sorry, negative 1 in for z. And I solve for y. When I solve for y, I get y equals negative 3. So my answer, x equals 1, y equals negative 3, z equals negative 1. That's algebraically, that's 4 points. Now to check it, or to get your 1 point if it's open response, or your full credit if it's multiple choice, we're going to use PolySci 2. So, apps, PolySci 2, it might not be in number 9, but it'll be wherever it's going to be. Simultaneous equation solver. It's 3 by 3, so I change the equations to 3 and the unknowns to 3. Next is above the graph button, and then I type in the system. What's in front of the first x? 1, enter, enter. 2, enter, enter. Negative 3, enter. Negative 2. 2, enter, enter. Negative 2, enter, enter. 1, enter. 7. 1, enter, enter. 1, enter, enter. 2, enter. Negative 4. Once I type it in, solve is above the graph button. I hit solve, and there are your answers. Again, if it's open response, you're getting 1 point for that, which is better than none. But if it is open response and you want your full points, you have to do it algebraically. I'm not going to do number 8. It's multiple choice. Again, do not do it algebraically. Just use your polysimul 2 to get your answer. Operations with complex numbers. If it's multiple choice, just use multiple choice strategy. We want to store our values for x and y. In this case, just x, because there's only one variable. So I've got, let's get out of there. I've got 10 store as x. Since I was messing around with other things I was storing before, let's go back to 10. I've got 2 minus xi to type in I, second decimal point, squared, enter. Negative 96 minus 40i. Now I type in each of the choices. Choice 1, there. X squared minus 4xi plus 4. That's not the same. Negative x squared minus 4xi plus 4. That's the same. That's the answer. If it's multiple choice, use your multiple choice strategy. For number, I guess we'll come back to it. Number 11, solve for x and express your answer in simplest radical form. Actually, it should say simplest a plus bi form. Oops. Mr. X squared, he wants to party. Before he can party, all of his friends have to come over. Plus 12, plus 12. X squared minus 6x plus 12 equals 0. Party time. He wants to party with Bubbles. There's no GCF. Are there two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to 6? Nope. And I knew there wouldn't be, because if it says simplest a plus bi form, that means it's not going to factor. So what does he do? All of his friends are over, ready to party. Bubble machine's broken. He busts out his guitar and he sings his song. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. List your a, b, and c values. A is what's in front of the x squared. B is what's in front of the x. C is your constant. Substitute them in. Negative b means change the sign of b. So if this is negative 6, it's positive 6. Plus or minus radical b is negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12 all over 2 times 1. Type what's inside the radical into the calculator. So I've got negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12, negative 12. So I rewrite this with radical negative 12, and 2 times 1 is 2. This is where students get messed up. Next, off to the side, reduce the radical. The negative comes outside and becomes an I. I break down 12 into my perfect squares and my non-perfect squares. If you need to, use the trick, go to y equals, type in 12 divided by x, go to your table. You're looking for the largest number in the y column. That's a perfect square. It's 4, 4 and 3. So it becomes 2i radical 3. So now I'm going to rewrite this as x equals 6 plus or minus 2i radical 3 over 2. And your final step, the heart. I love quadratic formula, or I love the fact that I'm almost done with quadratic formula. However you want to look at it, 6 over 2 is 3, plus or minus 2i over 2 is 1i radical 3. That's your answer. This is something you cannot check in the calculator. If you try to do it, it will give you an error. So this is one unfortunately you can't check in the calculator. Okay. 13, Mr. X to the 4th, same thing. He wants to party. Before he can party, all of his friends have to come over. Minus 27, minus 27. Party time. It has to factor. Quadratic formula you can only use if it's an x squared, if the highest power is x squared. If it's higher than that, it has to factor. You cannot use quadratic formula unless it's a quadratic, which this isn't. Is there a GCF? No. Trinomial? Yes. X squared and x squared, because there's an x squared here. First sign comes down, negative and a negative is a positive, multiplies to 27, 1 and 27, 2, no, 3 and 9, that's it. Subtracts to 6, bigger number goes first, equals 0. Now I can factor further, but I'd rather not. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. Because in this case, I can just do isolate square root method for each of them. Isolate square root. When you take the square root, it's plus or minus 3. Isolate square root. When you take the square root, it's plus or minus negative. Radical negative 3, the negative comes outside, it becomes an I. I can't reduce it further. If I could reduce it, I would. Those are my answers. There should be 4 answers. Plus or minus 3, that's 2. Plus or minus I radical 3, that's 2 more. It will cross the x-axis twice, since there are 2 real solutions and 2 imaginary solutions. So you will have one of those on there. We're back to our complex numbers now, but now we're open response, so calculator tricks will not help us. We need to be able to do it algebraically. So we know that squared means times itself, and I know to multiply any binomial by itself, I use my box. So I have 3k minus 2i times 3k minus 2i. 3k and 3k is 9k squared. Minus 6ki minus 6ki. Negative 2 and negative 2 is positive 4. I and I is I squared. Combine like terms, 9k squared. Negative 6ki and negative 6ki is negative 12ki plus 4i squared. The only thing that makes this different than Algebra 1 is I squared. You need to know that I squared is equivalent to negative 1. So if an I squared pops up, you replace the I squared with negative 1 and multiply it through. So it becomes minus 4. In this case, there are no other like terms that could be combined. I'm done. So this is really the same thing we did at the beginning of the year, the same thing as Algebra 1, but if you see an I squared pop up, I squared is equivalent to negative 1. So you will see one of those on there, as well as multiple choice, which we did before. All right, we got our focus directrix stuff. Y equals 1 over 4p x minus v squared plus t. Focus is negative 2, 5. Directrix is y equals 9. I know that the vertex is always in between the other two, so it's got to be in between these two. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Half of 4 is 1, 2. That's your vertex. It can't touch the directrix, so it's got to open down. List your V, T, and P. V equals T equals P equals. VT is the vertex. The coordinates of the vertex are negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So V is negative 2 and T is 7. P is the distance from the vertex to the focus, 1, 2, and since it opens down, it's negative 2. Minus in a formula means change the sign, so I will change the sign of V, but nothing else. Y equals, oh, it froze. I unfroze. So Y equals 1 over 4 times negative 2. X minus V means change the sign of V, so plus 2 squared. Plus T means keep the sign of T, plus 7. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, so it's negative 1/8. X plus 2 squared plus 7. Be careful that you circle the right answer. It's got to be negative. Those aren't negative. It's got to be a plus 2, a plus 7. It's choice 2. For something like number 18, once you get it in the proper form, so I'm going to save some time here, but the answer, once you did that, should have been y equals negative 1/8 x plus 2 squared plus 7. Basically, just cross out the ones it can't be. The x plus 2 is what's being squared, so choice 1 and 2 have the y minus 7 squared. Those can't be correct. The difference between choice 3 and choice 4 is the negative. There is a negative, therefore it would have to be choice 4. So if the answers aren't in the proper format, just do it the same way, get your answer, and then you can get to the correct answer just by crossing out the ones that obviously don't match. The other direction, when I give you the equation, you must pull the vertex and the p-value. The vertex, negate what's with the x, don't negate what's outside. And for the p-value, divide this by 4, since the equation is 4p, negative 1. Plot it, negative 3, negative 6 is your vertex. P is 1, so up 1 and down 1. Since P is negative, it's opening down, which makes this the directrix, and this one the focus. It's asking for the focus. That's negative 1, 2, 3. Negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If they give you the equation, pull the vertex and the p-value. Plot the vertex, go up and down the p-value. If it's negative, open it down. If it was positive, open it up. And then you'll have your focus and your directions from there. And finally, a little bit of spiral review. Which binomial is not a factor? Well, to determine if something's a factor, I need to find the remainder using remainder theorem, which is substituting the opposite of what I'm dividing by in for x. Storing will make this a lot easier. So if I want to substitute negative 6 in, I'm going to go negative 6, store as x. I'm going to type in x cubed minus 4x squared minus 25x plus 28 I get negative 182. I'm going to go through the rest of the choices. 7 store as x. I can just copy and paste this in order to sub into it. 0, 1, and negative 4. So let's go, 1 store as x. 0, and negative 4. Store as x. 0. It's a factor if the remainder is 0. 2, 3, and 4 have a remainder of 0. Choice 1 does not. So there's 22 questions on the review sheet, which means there's 11 questions on the test. Determine if something is a factor by substituting the opposite in for x to find the remainder. If it's 0, it is. If it's not 0, it's not. If they give you the equation, pull the vertex and the p-value and move to the graph. If they want you to write the equation, 1 over 4p x minus v squared plus t. For complex numbers, we do what we normally do. But if we see an I squared pop up, when we see an I squared pop up, we replace it with negative 1. Mr. X to the 4th, everything to one side, factor, set each factor equal to 0. You will have x squared and x squared, so you will have to do isolate square root, and make sure you do plus or minus for each of them. If it doesn't factor and it's an x squared, that's when you do your quadratic formula. If it's multiple choice with complex numbers, use the calculator, type in the original problem, type in each answer, see what matches up. For your 3x3 systems, know how to do it algebraically. Also know how to use your apps PolySimult 2, simultaneous equation solver. For your fractional equation, multiply by the LCD. And as a backup, you have y1, y2 intersect. For a radical equation, isolate the radical and square both sides. As a backup, you have y1, y2 intersect. And if it's multiple choice, I don't care what type of equation it is, just take each answer, substitute it in, using your storing function or not, type in the left, type in the right, see if they match up. Don't bother with the algebra, because either way, you have to check. And I should have said that as well in the end of review. Once you get your answers, you must check. If it doesn't work, you didn't necessarily do anything wrong, cross it out. It's a reject. Practice. You know exactly what's going to be on your exam. It's up to you to practice it. And that's all I got. Practice, 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 and see ya.